Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining tonight's workshop number 4 and 5. We decided to combine these two. We will have an opportunity to hear from Mr. Noble Smith, who will be talking with us this evening about mapping tools, data usage, and accessibility. For those of you who may be attending these workshops for the first time, this is our series as part of the Mid-Atlantic Data Collaborative and our effort to build a pilot air quality monitoring system in DC and Maryland. And these workshops are open to all across the Central Atlantic Conference here with the United Church of Christ. So we're glad that we have many of you from New Jersey who are joining these sessions as well. And yes, we are in conversation with our partners about the possibility of extending the pilot to New Jersey as well. So just be patient with us, we ask, as we have these conversations, and we hope to share some information with you in the coming weeks. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Noble so he can begin our presentation. For those of you, I encourage you to introduce yourselves in the chat. Just include your name, your local church, and your local church state or area. Thanks. Noble, turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you for having me. Can everyone hear me all right? Sound good? Awesome. Amazing. Right. So yes, as Reverend Silver just mentioned, my name is Noble Smith. I am from Community Engagement, Environmental Justice and Health Center out of College Park, Maryland. Right now I live in Silver Spring, but I'm originally from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So a little bit in the middle of North Carolina, but we've got a lot of resources, some great fall weather down there too. But what I'm here to talk to you about today is mapping tools for a little bit, and then we're gonna talk a little bit about data usage and data accessibility. So I'm just going to share my screen. I'm again very happy everyone's here participating. I love to see this amount of engagement, and it looks like we're from all over, which is even better. So just sharing my screen real quick, and I will get to the slideshow. Just 1 second. Oh, Reverend Silver, is it possible that you could remove the spotlight off of me to allow to share my screen? Great. Ariel, is it possible that you could perhaps share the slideshow? For some reason on my end.
Sure, let me try.
Oh, great. Thanks, Ariel.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, just some minor technical difficulties, but we are good to go. So yeah, the mapping tools part of this will focus on MD-EJ screen and EPA-EJ screen. These are two screening tools to help visualize how environmental hazards are sort of placed and located, and use like census tract data to just visualize how where communities are, what communities are dealing with. So if you could go to the next slide, Ariel. All right, yeah, so we'll just have a quick little warm up, intro into mapping activities. We'll do a couple quick activities just so you all can get a feel for the tools and just see how they work. And then we'll do a wrap up. Next slide. All right, yep, next one. All right, so on your screen, I have a couple quick printouts of some mapping tools that have been developed either on a state level. Well, all of these are state level mapping tools. So the idea is that these, usually it's with a partnership between a university and a state agency, but it's a way for the state to sort of publish the information that they've collected through data, whether it's like land surveys, census data, hospital data, a lot of collected data that has impacts on the environmental quality of a community. Of course, like that's a lot of information, right? So to put this in one place to help visualize how that looks like in proximity or on like in a geospatial lens, mapping tools have been developed, right? So on the top left corner, we have Cal EnviroScreen, and then below that, North Carolina EnviroScreen, and then on the right, top right, we have Washington, and the bottom right, we have Virginia. So not every state has a mapping tool, but they're all being developed sort of in general, right? I think California has one of the more robust mapping tools. They're on their fourth version of their mapping tool. So that's why you see Cal 4.0. The EPA has only released 2 versions of their mapping tools. That sort of tells you where, like how far this mapping tool technology has really come and developed and where we are right now. Can you go to the next slide, Ariel? Oh, and if anyone just generally has questions, feel free to unmute and ask them or put them in the chat. I'll try to get to them. If I miss any, just feel free to come off mute. Now, up on the screen right now is the EPA EJ screen. So this is using national level data. It is a screening tool that allows you to compare states as well. So say you want to look at one community in Nashville and then in another community in like Charleston, West Virginia, right? You're able to compare environmental hazards to the census tract level between communities. So can you go to the next slide, Ariel? Right, and now this is Maryland EJ screen, right? This is a tool that was created partnership with the center and a couple other community partners to help visualize what the environmental hazards are, how EJ issues affect Maryland residents, which issues affect which Maryland residents the most, and which areas, right? So of course, like Eastern Shore and Western Maryland are going to have different sort of EJ exposures and different EJ issues. Some communities are going to be more concerned with rising Atlantic tides than other communities, and some communities are going to be more concerned with pipeline leakages than other communities. So that's generally what the mapping tools are about. I think now is just a good time. If Ariel, you can go to the next slide. We can just talk about what mapping tools are used for. So, right, in general, mapping tools are both for the public at large and policymakers and, public figures. So sort of both sides of the permitting process will use mapping tools, whether it's a community advocate or the, Department of Environmental Quality employee. They'll both mapping tools like MD EJ screen and EPA EJ screen are useful in understanding where the hazards are in a community, what sorts of concerns a community has. Looking at, you know, is the air quality in this region, is it able to sustain a new polluting facility? And what are the pollutants that most affect these communities? They have different scoring that shows you like the intensity of environmental justice issues. They also allow you to look at different community sizes, right? So you have like your county level, or your municipal level, and then the smallest geospatial, I guess, level that is used is the census tract level. So that is even more specific than county and city. It's looking at your specific census tract, which is even more specific than like area code. These mapping tools also have additional context layers for things that aren't necessarily environmental justice concerns, but factor into community health, right? So as part of the MD EJ screen, we have a layer that looks specifically at COVID rates, right? So not necessarily an environmental concern, but it is a health concern, and it impacts and compounds environmental health issues. So can you go to the next slide, Ariel? Right. And then for Maryland specifically, we are using local data to help build our tool. We're currently in the process of building MD EJ Screen 2.0, so that should be launching either by the end of the year or early next year. And that tool has a little bit more specific data and uses some of the types of analyses that we've talked to community members that they want, right? So, of course, EPA EJ Screen can't capture all of the concerns for certain communities, right? They can't get national data on certain community issues, but at a state level, you're able to better collect data on like health or, you know, specific housing issues or specific areas where flooding occurs and the types of flooding that does occur. So Maryland and like the other state tools generally have a little bit more specifics on the local community concerns. Can we go to the next one, Ariel? All right, so I will put this in the chat as well, but yeah, I think now would be a great time for everyone to use MD EJ Screen. So in the chat, I'm going to put the link to the screening tool. If you could, I think what would be good for everyone is to, I guess, type in, well, honestly, this will actually only work if you're from Maryland. If you could just type in your community into that address or place bar, it'll give you a nice representation of your EJ community, and we can sort of walk through the different aspects of the tool. So if you can just give me 1 second, I can get that link over to you.
I got it. I got it. It might be
Okay,
different.
Ariel, can you put it in the chat actually?
Yes, no problem. It's in the chat now.
Right. So I'll just give you all a second to open it up, see sort of
I got
how
an
the
error.
functional
I got an error when I
get
clicked it.
error message.
So did I.
Let me see if I can copy it and paste it or
Yeah.
take something out.
I think
Oh,
we may have.
No, that's so strange.
Another error message. Let me try a second one here.
You can
Looks good.
also find it if you just like search on the web. So like, for example, MD EJ Screen.
MD EJS screen. Okay, let me try that. MD
And if
EJS.
yes, so sometimes if it might take you to, you can either do this, the one on our Siege website, and we have a link right here, and it will take you to the application. Sorry,
Yeah,
I may have.
we should probably on our end figure out why that link isn't working.
Yeah, I still got an error message when I clicked on the link at the bottom. Can you try right here?
I didn't. I got to it.
Oh, you got to it? Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Maybe I got too many pages open.
Oh, try the one that Okay, so for everyone else, I added the link for our center page. Maybe try scrolling there and click it from there.
For removing the HTTP. Just, typing straight in.
Yeah, that may work as well.
Yeah, it shows up as without HTTP, but it opened for me.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else getting through or having trouble?
I'm not able to get onto it either. I tried 2 different browsers. I tried a private, window and not working for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not working for me either.
I was able,
Somebody else was able to get in?
yes, well, I was able to get that screen, the one, when I clicked on that last entry that I put there, yes, then map came up.
Oh, okay.
Wow,
Is that what we're supposed
interesting.
to see? Is that what we're supposed to see?
Yes.
No,
With
it's
on the
supposed to-
right, there's a layers on the right.
Yes, and you're able to kind of scroll over and touch it, take it off, click them on.
I'm trying to see if I can. Not
The
sure now.
last-
I'm on a phone. So with says EJ. So when you say click on it, I'm looking at the I see you moving around. I see someone, right. What should I be able to do?
So I'm moving around right now. Are you seeing that I can either click this box and then the map kind of disappears on this side?
Exactly.
Or I do it on this side, this box.
Okay. Should I be able to do something or no? I'm just watching.
Yes, you should be able, if you've clicked the link, unless you've clicked if you've clicked the last entry, that means you might be seeing this. Are you seeing this or are you seeing what
I
I
see
just?
where you just were, but I'll go
Okay,
back.
perfect.
I can get some of it on a different computer, but it's not interactive, but I'm okay. I'll just watch.
Yes,
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
fine.
The second link is working for me.
Oh, maybe
Okay.
I'll go out to the second link to see if that.
Yeah, that's where I went. It just,
Mhm.
it is what it
Okay.
is.
Yeah. Well, at least we can at least see it and you guys can still understand. You can all understand, I should say.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Ariel, thank you for all your help with that. I may ask you just to hop in with any more information that you want to say about these screening tools.
For sure.
But in general, right, this is sort of the standard, I guess, layout or approach to these screening tools. You sort of have for statewide tools, they really focus and have all this information internally. So you'll get, your state map, and depending on what data set you're looking for, what sort of information you're looking for, the screening tool will give you a little bit more specifics on how to sort of reach that and ways of displaying. Ariel, if you could go back to the PowerPoint really quickly, and just go to the next slide. So, right, this is the page we're just looking at. So in the creation of the MDEJ tool, EJ screen tool, we from Siege really wanted to look at these four major categories of exposure, environmental effect, sensitive population, and socioeconomic factors. Those sort of four main buckets are the way we categorize all the information and data sets that we use to create this MDEJ screen map. Sorry about that. So that is generally what this map is showing you. Right now, what we have are the EJ scores up. EJ scoring is relatively new, but what it allows you to do and the purpose of scoring is to really show all of the cumulative effects of, environmental racism, long-term pollution, community divestment, well, not community divestment, government divestment from communities, and sort of score that on a metric. So with MDEJ screen, the counties and census tracts that have sort of this lighter beige color have the lowest scores. And then counties that have the dark red to sort of maroon color will have the highest EJ scores. So those are communities that have, poor air quality, but also have a lot of flood hazards or poor air quality, poor water quality, and have been formerly redline neighborhoods, right? So these are areas where we, Siege's side, believe that this is where a lot of the Justice 40 sort of benefits work can be done, right? Where environmental benefits should be directed are these communities that have suffered these long-term environmental harms. Can you click the next slide, Ariel? All right, and then this is just a little bit on the functionality side of it all. You're able to zoom in, zoom out. If you want to have the mapping tool zoom in on your exact location, we have that feature as well. But this is more if you just want to use the tool to play around. So yeah, you can accomplish a pretty sizable zoom. Ariel, if you just zoom in on Baltimore, I guess it'll give you a little bit more idea of like the specifics and how detailed these EJ scores can get, and the specific detail that census tract sort of data allows you to have, right? So this is Baltimore city, and then also has some of the surrounding county. But yeah, this is MDEJ screen. I'm sorry we couldn't get the link through as clear as possible, but if you want and you have the ability at this time, if you want to type in your home address or the address of your church, it'll give you a sort of readout of exposure in the area, the EJ score for the census tract, and then if you want, we can discuss, or we can just move on to the next part of the presentation.
I just want to add to Noble's, what Noble was discussing regarding the different domains that we use for indicators for the MDEJ screen. So he did mention we use exposure indicators, environmental effects, sensitive population indicators, and socioeconomic factors. So I guess I just want to show you just a little deeper into, for example, the exposure indicators bucket. So as you can see, there's pollution burden, there's ozone, PM 2.5. We know that's definitely something that has been on our radar within environmental justice communities. Traffic proximity and volume. And as you can see with this layer on, I've essentially just turned on this layer. And I'm going to turn on the PM 2.5. You can see that the colors the contrast has increased. And especially within the Baltimore region, you can see that as Noah mentioned, you know, the deeper crimson it gets means the higher the scoring is in that space, i.e. the higher the concentration of these pollutants are in this area. So essentially you can fiddle around or move around on the website, on the mapping tool, sorry, and just go to the different domains at the top here. So you see for the environmental effects domain, they have some lead paint, you know, proximity to disposal facilities, even watershed failure and major direct water discharges. A lot of these things are not like for some of the things that we try to capture within the MDG screen tool is not included in other screening tools. So for example, at our center, we maintain that environmental justice without socioeconomic factors, without including race in these mapping tools, it's essentially, you're not capturing the whole scope of what's occurring. So that's something that we always make sure to include. And that is, yeah, just to give you a better picture of what's happening with the actual map. I will continue with your presentation.
Yeah, thank you for that, Ariel. I think it's really, I've been looking at a bunch of these mapping tools, and it's interesting to see, you know, where the overlap is state to state or across tools, and like sort of impacts that you measure. So yeah. This slide's just sort of showing you about like the search bar functionality. So it can capture an address. If you type in like a public park near you, it is able to capture like the public park. And it can also capture like citywide locations, right? So if you want sort of down to the address level, you can get a specific address census data, but it will also give you like general, if you want information on Gaithersburg, it'll allow you to search for Gaithersburg. So can we go to the next slide, Ariel? Again, this is just a little bit more of the functionality for, I guess, community members and community partners. It also allows you to print out the map. So if you want to present this information in an in-person setting or want to just like have a PDF of the map itself, that print function will allow you to get a clean version of what the map is showing you without having like this EJ score layer on the side or some of the functionality that comes with the tool. It also allows you to have a side-by-side viewer. That side-by-side viewer is great for comparisons as well. So if you want to see like which community has the highest unemployment rate and then compare it to which communities have the highest amount of PM 2.5 exposure, you're able to do that without creating two different maps. Well, without creating one map with a lot of clutter. You're able to sort of remove all of the other data and only focus on these two factors. Can we go to the next slide, Ariel? Right. This is just a quick general video about the tools and the layers. I think we can just skip over this one and then the next couple videos.
Yeah.
But what we can do is we can send these videos out. They're pre-recorded, so they don't have my voice, but we can send these videos out. They have a little bit more information on each of the layers, some more functionality, and then a little bit tips and tricks on how to use the tool. And we'll send those out to Reverend Sylvan and John after. So yeah. So yeah, and this is a little bit what I was talking about with the EJ scores. So the closer you are to 1, the more hazards and I guess environmental injustices the community has experienced. So the lighter areas show, I guess, the least amount of environmental injustice. Not saying like nothing happened there, but more saying that in other areas there were more intense hazards. Can we go to the next slide? Right, and this is again just talking about the layers. And if you, in the top right corner of the mapping tool, you'll see this button that says C. So the C button is for context layers. This is where we'll have a lot of the environmental specific information, but a lot of the related stuff about like COVID or like other health effects, infant mortality, things like that would be overlaid in these specific layers. Next slide, please. Yeah, we can skip that. Yeah, and this is, from here, we just have a little bit of information on how we created the tool, and then these scores. We based it off of the CalEnviro screen. We think it's pretty good to have, well, the CalEnviro screen sets a pretty good example that even like the EPA bases its stuff on. So, and they're pretty much like the shining light at the front of this screening tool revolution. Yeah, so we focused on exposure, environmental effects, socioeconomic factors, and sensitive populations. And the next version of this tool, we are adding in a domain that focuses specifically on climate change impacts. So looking at areas that are going to be heavily impacted by climate change, either infrastructure or landscape-wise, will also be an additional level of analysis in the MDEJ screen tool. So yeah, next slide, Ariel. Again, these are some of the data points in the tool. It's these next couple slides will just keep, we'll continue to show the data points that we used. So if you just want to go through it, right, like I was saying, environmental effects, sensitive populations, right, so we're looking at like asthma, myocardial infarction, low birth weight, and then socioeconomic, if you want to click the next one, Ariel. Yeah, socioeconomic factors, right? Low income, high school education, population over 65, under 5, linguistic isolation. So this is, like Ariel mentioned before, right? The inclusion of race is one of those, I guess, hesitant issues to include in these mapping tools, not only because of like the racial climate we're in, but just because there is often some statistical gaps and some of the racial data that we have, right? So a lot of this is pulled from the census, but you know, the census often has some glaring issues when it comes to racial categories. So with all of this information, right, we're at least on the national level, you kind of have to be a little bit patient with how you use the tool and what information you're trying to get out of it. So, right, here's the first activity that we would have you do. It's also something you can do and demonstrate within your community, right? To see how in a particular community or in a neighborhood, how different exposures can be, or how different socioeconomic factors can be, right? I know, there's this like community knowledge and awareness, but often it is helpful to put these things on display, which is the purpose of these mapping tools, right? To say like, hey, we know in this part of town, the air quality is bad, and we also have flooding in our basements. We know in this other part of town, policies have been undertaken, and it has led to these results. And therefore, we want, these same policies in our communities. So I think that's generally our air quality stuff. I want to put a break in here now, so just to take questions, have a little discussion. We can talk a little bit more about mapping tools. But yeah, I think that's the first part. We're going to talk about data usage and accessibility in a little bit. But I just wanted to sort of wrap up here, allow people to mess around with the tool a little bit, get some questions. Hopefully we can answer them. But yeah.
Noble, I have a quick question for you. I missed
Yeah.
the beginning of the workshop. I had an appointment. Is there an equivalent like this for states besides Maryland?
Yeah. So a couple states have them. Maryland, California, New Jersey are off the top of my head, but most of the Ariel is pulling up one right now.
Oh, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Honestly, most of the coastal states, whether that's East or West Coast, have developed these screening tools.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, and it's about like also because this is like it's often a government university collaboration, right? It's in the states that aren't really, in the state governments that aren't really pushing for environmental justice and reform or investments. They don't have these tools developed. So,
Gotcha.
even if they do have the tools developed, they may be lacking some critical information. So there's a lot of variation between the tools. Cal EJ Screen as right now, and then EPA EJ Screen are the two sort of examples that a lot of states are basing their tools off of. But yeah, so there's a lot of variation out there, but there are 50 states as well, so it's kind of expected.
All right, I'll have to look up a Pennsylvania one to share with my classmates at seminary. I think they'd think this was real neat.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Thanks. All right, then I think we can just go on to data usage and collection. So this will probably be a quick refresher for the people who were able to make the last call. I guess it was 2 weeks ago, and deals a little bit more with the air quality networks that we're looking to install. So yeah, in general, there's a massive data gap between EJ communities and decision makers, right? Specifically around air quality and water quality. And this exists because like there's a huge gap in investment in communities, right? So oftentimes, say your state level official will say, all right, we need to install air monitors and water monitors to test water quality across the state, right? But if there isn't a lot of money, you can't really deploy a lot of sensors. Or if there isn't a lot of community engagement, even if you do deploy sensors, you're not really going to be capturing community needs or even like community wants. So this data gap exists. We know it exists, and it has sort of detrimental effects when it comes to the siting of pollutants or polluting facilities. Oftentimes, you go to a permitting, I guess, sometimes they're meetings, sometimes they're just like commentary periods, and people will say, you know, the air quality is terrible. And then someone else who is advocating for the polluter will say the air quality is good. And then it's a he said, she said scenario. But if you have the local air quality data, you can present that in a way that is persuasive, right? I think it's helpful to realize that most of these decision makers are just people. So if you're able to present them with sort of facts that can back up a statement, it goes much farther when it comes to community advocacy. Often, right, in these permitting, I guess, meetings and comment period, you'll have advocates on both sides. And the people who are pushing for, let's say, a tire iron plant to be developed in your community have a lot of money invested into it, and they have a lot of, you know, charts about how many jobs this will bring, but they don't have information on how it's going to affect air quality, right? And that's, you know, strategic on their part, but that information still needs to be brought to the table. So in general, this data gap can be solved, you know, from the top down or the bottom up. We're thinking that the bottom up approach will probably be the best way to leave the least amount of gaps, really provide as much coverage to communities, and then get that information out to the decision makers as well as community members for self-advocating. So can we go to the next slide, Ariel? So one of the pollutants that we're most focused on is PM 2.5 and PM 10. PM 2.5 is the finer version of it. If you want to sort of understand, excuse me, the size of these sort of particles that we're looking at, it's significantly less than this strand of hair, right? Or smaller than beach sand. But this is breathable material. It's in the air. Often, you know, this is what you breathe in. It's causing cardiovascular risk, pulmonary risk, and, you know, high quantities. This is the stuff that if you live next to a smokestack will dye your house. So this is the toxic air pollutants that we're breathing in. PM 2.5 is one of the, it's on the smaller side, but is still particularly hazardous. Can we go to the next one, Ariel? So yeah, like I was saying, there is a gap in taking in and reading this information. And why also the census tract data is super important. So say you only have one monitor in a county, if that monitor is only reading what is captured in like the 100-foot radius, that doesn't give you a full scope of community impacts. So we worked with a organization called Acclima to really sort of see how big these PM 2.5 differences can be between on a county level. So yeah, I think what this slide's really trying to demonstrate is that this gap exists for a number of reasons. Often it's distance, sometimes it's investment, but this is why these like hyper local monitors are necessary as well. So we can see the range within an area of PM 2.5. So that's part of the intro. Can we go to the next one, Ariel? So yeah, this is the purple air map. Vex spoke a little bit about this, but this is a publicly available resource. If you type in purpleair.com into your browser, you're able to see this map. It'll try to zoom in on your location to tell you the air quality near you. Ariel, can you go to the next one? Right, and this is for the DC area. So I guess a couple slides ahead, it gave you this sort of breakdown of what air quality looks like, and there is some at the bottom as well, right? So we're able to set up some pretty intense purple air networks, and this is also something we're looking to set up with UCC, right? So ideally, we're able to install these monitors on the churches that, come forward and say that they want them. And we can set up these networks to use and track this data in your communities, right? So instead of having a monitor on the other side of town, you can have one in your backyard. Next slide, Ariel, please. Right. So this sort of harkens back to what we were saying on the mapping tools. This purple air map also sort of functions as a mapping tool, right? You can zoom in, see where the air quality is the worst near you, which monitor is reading the highest, which monitor is reading the lowest. The map will also let you know if there are like bus depots or major transportation depots in the area. And that's it. It has it only has one sort of major layer. So these screening tools had 10 to 15 layers that they could show. This purple air map only shows air quality. Next slide, please, Ariel. All right, and then eventually, once we have these monitors set up, what we're able to do is you can search actually for the monitor itself, right? So we'll go through a process of naming them. They probably will be named after the church itself. So it'll say like UCC _ Bethel Church. And then we will have a monitor set up. It'll give you sort of minute by minute readings of the air quality. And then, we can use that data to either report to government officials, bring to community meetings, show how that data is helpful to communities, right? One of the interventions we're doing is in Chevrolet, and another one is in Newark. The community we're working with in Newark, we are working on presenting this data in a way that will help the community understand, what times is PM 2.5 the highest around them, when what days of the week have the highest amount of PM 2.5, which days of the week also have the highest temperature on average. So looking at how we can make this data most applicable and helpful to communities is the main point of establishing these monitors. Can we go to the next slide, Ariel? Right, and then this is just going through a little bit more of that functionality. We can keep going. Right, and each dot you click will give you this readout of the air quality. Next one's good too. All right, so yeah, that is sort of, I mean, well, I did speak for an hour. That's the general, sometimes a little more detailed look at these EJ screening tools, as well as this data gap that exists. Again, thank you for sticking with me. I apologize for some of those technical difficulties earlier on, but I'm here to answer any questions. Hopefully now this can be a little bit more conversational rather than me just speaking at you. So please let me know if you have any questions, but that is sort of the end of our presentation.
Great. Thanks for walking us through all that. I'll plunge headfirst into giving the first question. You had mentioned that the government installed monitors can have a 20-mile gap between sites. Could you provide any clarity if you have an understanding of how the process works for getting those installed? Like, is that something that we could push Uncle Sam on to try to get more installed, or is that sort of outside? You know what I mean? Like, I know that they're
Yeah,
a federal agency.
it's
Yeah,
it's multifaceted, right? So right, I think often when it comes to like government, well, getting things from the government, there has to be sort of a carve out on their end in the first place, right? So this is sort of what I was talking about with the top-down approach. Often the government doesn't really know the specific concerns of the community. They may just be aware of like the most general concerns. So say like you have a monitor. So this, I guess like this is how the 20-mile problem happens, right? The government is aware that you have a hazard and it's a pretty big hazard and they want to capture, you know, the way that this polluting facility affects air quality in your town. And they establish it, you know, at town hall. But that isn't sort of, while that is a central location for like the community, that doesn't accurately capture air quality on the outskirts. And then if you wanted to install a monitor sort of on the outskirts of town, it gets a little bit difficult when you know, some of the communities we're in are like unincorporated, have sort of a less political clout than others. So often I think when you're going from that top-down approach, there's a little bit more, there are more strings attached to how you get your monitor. I think from the grassroots level, you can identify what like hazard you're actually trying to track, right? If you're looking at like ozone or like sulfur dioxide, you may need a different sort of monitor than if you're looking for, you know, diesel fumes or PM 2.5. Does that help answer your question, John?
Yeah. Because I don't think I fully understand how it is that the EPA goes about deciding where the monitors actually get placed. So that was part of what I was trying to get at is, are they setting it up in like a grid pattern? Are they putting it in hot spots where they expect to find something, that sort of thing? Because I think that affects, you know, how you push them to do something about it.
Exactly. Thanks for your question, John.
Yeah.
Tom?
Yeah, thank you. That was a nice presentation. I was just thinking, following on the last question, it seems like with the new funding that's coming through the infrastructure bill and the recently passed legislation, which includes an environmental justice component, it seems like the types of work which you're doing at the grassroots level really could help the Environmental Protection Agency to improve their targeting on the air quality monitoring that they're doing themselves. And so I think this is, I don't work for the EPA, I work for NOAA, but I think this is the type of things that you know, our agency and other agencies right now are looking for. So thank you for all your work on this.
Yeah, thank you. And we appreciate it. I think, like you're saying, right, there's a lot of funding becoming available through like some political actions. And with that funding, what we fear is that, you know, it's going to dry up immediately if it's not utilized, right? So laying the groundwork for community advocacy, you know, based off of the data we provide is the idea. Right. I think it's better if, you know, the community members present the data that's been collected rather than someone who's outside of the community advocating for a change in an area they've never been to. So yeah, I think often it's about, you know, giving people the resources that allow them to advocate all over the state rather than, you know, popping in at different places.
And just to add to that point, it should also be interesting to see what the new Office of the Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights, the new EPA office that will oversee the $3 billion climate and environmental justice block grant program. That's huge. That's a big step. So, you know, at least with respect to the bigger agencies, you know, at least we can hopefully see some better movement forward with respect to the EPA. So I just wanted to add that onto the discussion.
Well, to that end then, I guess part of my question is also, I recognize that getting the feds to do anything is a little bit like herding cats. Do you guys think this has the potential to give forward movement on getting them to do something? You know what I mean? Like if we're throwing stuff up against the wall to see what sticks, if we identify a hotspot, is that the sort of thing that you could meaningfully take to the EPA and say, please, for the love of God, install a better monitor that it's not community run? You know, like we've identified a problem, can you come fix it? Or, I mean, is their process amenable to that, or?
Right. So I think to be fair, we essentially do it regardless of the EPA. So we want to, yeah. So essentially a lot of the data we'll be collecting, we want to input it into the MDEG screen to make the screening tool more robust so that, you know, as Noble said, like to take it into the community's own hands and use that for the people to be more equipped, better equipped to then go out and, you know, be community scientists, and then of course for government agencies to take that. But I think at this point, okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to answer your question in a more diplomatic way, but I think Robin is itching to say something too. So you can jump in anytime, to be fair. I'll collect my thoughts and come back.
Sure. So the plan, you know, I'm Robin Lewis from Interfaith Power and Light, and also with Beloved Community UCC. But so the plan is ultimately to use these screening tools, and they will be used in different mapping legislatively. Okay, so for example, the Climate Solutions Now has a catalytic fund that will be using not this tool, but using another tool that maps low, moderate income or 80% below AMI areas. There are other Justice 40 initiatives that we're looking at as well. I'm involved in co-leading the Environmental Justice Legislative Table. And one of the things we're looking at is using different tools, because different tools will give you different results. Mm-hmm. So for example, if I look at LMI, I will exclude parts of Prince George's County because the county the average area median income is a little higher, but it still has the same environmental issues as Baltimore City, which has a lower LMI. So depending on the tool and depending on the policy and or associated legislation, that will determine which tools will be used, whether it will be LMI, whether it will be an EJ screening tool. So these are some of the issues that we face from a policy perspective, not using the same tool and not addressing the issues in communities that are overburdened, underserved. I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm in the process of working with other grassroots organizations to look at all of these different types of tools. And this information that we're gathering from this particular study will help us be able to go to the Maryland legislators and say, hey, we have data. We can show you from the ground. This is what we're collecting. So we are planning to use this.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Lacey. Could you talk a little bit about what the responsibilities of the church would be if they agree to have the sensor? What would be the process and the steps, I guess, that the church would be responsible for?
Yeah, I can speak on this a little bit, and if I have any missing, Ariel can chime in. So in general, all we're asking the churches, if you agree to like have this monitor installed, is we do a site visit and then just discuss with the building supervisor about where to install this monitor. We would need internet access and a Wi-Fi plug, but besides that, everything else would be handled by Siege. And if there isn't wireless capabilities, we also on our end can provide a hotspot for the monitor itself. So for the churches, it's much more of like we would just need the outside of the building to be able to put this monitor up on. But yeah, Ariel, am I missing anything?
No, yeah, perfectly said. I just want to add on to that because I know at the beginning when we first had started having these workshops, some folks were kind of worried about, maybe having to climb up to certain heights and, as Noble said, like, we would kind of assess the site and Siege would be handling the installation. So if you the only thing required of the host sites, which would be the churches, would be to maybe sometimes, if it's at a height that you can actually reach without hurting yourself, if there's maybe some debris or some trees, leaves on it, not trees, sorry, some leaves on it, maybe just clear that off. But if a monitor stops working, we can see that on the map itself. Noble and I actually just went out on Friday to a high school for another project. Their monitor wasn't working and we got it back online. So essentially we would come out to you if one of these monitors stopped working and replace it with a new one. But as Noble mentioned, if it is at a higher height, I should say, if you have I'm sorry, the word just escaped me. Noble, you used a specific word. To install it, to actually put it into like the wall. So yeah, you wouldn't have to handle that. I should just say that. You wouldn't have to handle the nitty-gritty of installing these monitors.
Great, thank you. And then, so checking to make sure the monitor is still working, that also is something you all are doing to see if the monitor is still reading, or would you want volunteers from the church to, check a website and make sure it's reading, or is that something you guys always do?
And s-
It can be both. Sorry, Noble, go ahead.
No, go
If
ahead.
you want, yeah, it can be both. I mean, we will always be like double checking, but if you, I mean, because, you know, we want you to feel like you're part of the process too. You know, we don't want to feel as if we are not, like, we want you to be collecting the data, you know? So if you are on the Purple Air map, and you're like, oh, well, this is my monitor, this is the one that I'm hosting right now, it seems like it's not collecting data, then you can just either reach out to either Reverend Silva or John or Robin, and then they can reach out to us, or we can also reach out to them if we notice that one of the monitors or sensors are offline. So it could be either or.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
I don't know if you're looking at hands up or what have you. I just had a question about how long a period of time the monitoring would go on, and at what intervals are you committed to coming out and checking on it? Or do you not need to come out because you can see the data and it's working and you're okay with that?
Right. So we wouldn't need to come out if the data is working. So sometimes we would if the data is being collected. So unless it goes offline, or unless you actively see that something is off with the monitor, say for example, it's looking a little wonky, it's physically maybe coming out of its position, you know, unless that's occurring, we would be fine with what the data that we're collecting that's being collected on the Purple Air site. So you can go on the Purple Air and we can actually download like spreadsheets of the daily data that's being collected. So we don't actively have to come and collect the data from the physical sensor.
Okay, and so there's not, how often are you monitoring it even from afar? You're
So-
collecting the data, how often?
So
guess
I
is-
know the Purple Air, Noble, could you correct me if I'm wrong? The Purple Air sensor collects data every 30 minutes or every 60 minutes.
Mhm.
And so that's constant, it's constantly being collected. So it's not just maybe like every 2 weeks, it's constantly being updated within the mapping system.
Sure. And how
Mhm.
long do you expect the project to last?
So right now, that is something that we are still kind of in discussion and talks with, because of course, once we have the monitors there collecting data, we have to kind of see how long we want it to be, like how long would be meaningful enough, if that makes sense. How long is meaningful enough for the amount
Right.
of data? Because, you know, as
Okay.
much as data as possible is always best,
Yes.
right?
Okay, but you never thought of it as this is a 1-year project, or this is a 10-year project, or this is a 90-day, pilot project.
Well,
Not
we
a-
do have, because it's a granted project, we do have a specific timeline. So,
Okay.
yeah, so it is very specific, but it's not gonna be something very short. It's not gonna be like a 5 months kind of timeline.
Is it a
Yeah.
year or 2 years? What do you?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so this is Robin Lewis. The plan
Mhm.
initially is to monitor this for at least like 12 months. We need to see. the
Mhm. Exactly.
Sure.
time. If,
Sure.
for example, we can maintain it and keep it up and it
Right.
proves to give us really useful data, which I'm sure it will, and funding, because this is funded through University of Maryland.
Mhm.
That will also determine, but we definitely want to leave it up at least a year
Okay.
to see what's going on, if not longer.
So you think it's, and it's 100% funded by University of Maryland?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, it is. In
that-
fact, in the beginning of this whole process, we do have, and Reverend Silver is not on, but we do have a host church agreement with UCC that if you were to agree to do this, there's a form we have that
Mhm.
lays out everything and explains what the church, if there's a problem or if there's not. So essentially, it really has very little impact on the church, on the facility itself.
Right.
It'll be there by itself unless there's a storm and something knocks it over and somebody notices that, and University of Maryland should know, or will see it's offline.
Right.
But it should be very, very little. And we also provide some funding, a little bit of funding. And John, you can jump in here. I believe it's $500 per church, whoever participates, just as an incentive, just as a, if you need anything kind of thing,
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
So we're
Personally, I'd like it to be used for forming a green team in the church if there's not one, but I mean, you can do whatever you want with it. It's,
Yes, we
it's
would
free
love
money.
that. And
Yeah.
Interfaith Power and Light will help you if you need it to form a green team. But yes, absolutely. But we do want to make sure it's easy for the church and also that you benefit from it.
Okay, and tell me what a green team is.
So a green team is a green ministry, or a creation care ministry. What a lot of churches have is they have an environmental ministry, environmental stewardship ministry that focuses on not just greening their church, but they focus on environmental issues and maybe doing some environmental things in the community. So
That might be a part of social justice.
Oh, it would be. It would
Yes.
absolutely be a part of social justice. In fact,
Okay.
I'm the social justice director for my church. The green team. So yes,
Okay.
it absolutely
Okay.
is. It absolutely
Mhm.
is.
Thank you.
So if you're interested, reach out. I'll help you, or just let Reverend Silver know and he'll hook you up with me. Okay?
Okay, thank you, Rob.
Right.
And I know for a fact there's at least one person on this call whose church has a green team that's doing some of that creation justice stuff. So we're,
And what church is that?
I don't remember the name of the church off the top of my head, but it's Ina's church. We had a conversation about this a couple weeks ago. But
Okay.
yeah, so green teams can mean, if you pursue the creation justice route, it can sort of mean what you want it to mean. You can pursue like green energy for the building. Some people really take it upon themselves to do all their landscaping with indigenous plants to like not disturb the biosphere, that sort of thing.
Okay.
But you guys can sort of figure out what it means for you, because I know, Rubina, your church is like right off of Arkansas.
We're on 13th Street and off of
13th Street.
Arkansas. There's
Okay.
a lot of traffic there. Yes.
Right,
And
so
but our biggest concern, as you might know, is the bus barn that's nearby, and that's in the neighborhood. And they're getting ready. They want to put gas-powered buses back, and we're hoping for them to go forward to electric. So that, because we believe that the fuel, the fumes and all of that are
Yeah.
having an impact on the community. And so that's why we're saying, yes, put this, purple air in here. So,
Yeah.
help you make
Yeah,
a case. Yeah, no,
please.
I used to live right off 16th Street. You're preaching to the choir. I know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd be dreading the bus fumes too if I were you.
Right.
And also, we have some other Beyond Gas campaigns going on, advocating in DC against gas, and also, trying to, promote electrification. So
mhm.
check out Interfaith Power and Light. I mean, there's a whole, we're working with a whole lot of faith communities already. So
Okay.
yeah, your issue is well noted, and it is impacting people's health. Absolutely.
Okay.
So any more questions? Anyone, any particular questions?
If our church is ready to do this, who do we contact?
I would say, yes,
John
go ahead,
raised his
John.
hand.
Yeah,
So
it's
John-
me.
John,
Email
yeah.
me.
Oh,
Perfect.
everybody
put my email in
contact
the chat
John.
for you.
I'm just kidding.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, John works with Reverend Silver, so, you know, yep.
Yeah, sorry, I missed my chance to introduce myself because I joined late, but I'm the environmental and climate justice organizer. So if you have any questions or anything, I'm the guy. I just put my email in the chat for you. Send me an email, give me a call, whatever is easiest for you. I guess I should put my phone in there too if I'm gonna invite you to do that. But I'd be happy to talk to you about it more if you have any like particular questions you don't want to air right now.
Yeah, and I think you send out the emails, don't you, John?
Yeah, I do.
He does too. He does, so.
I was curious about one thing. I was looking on the Purple Air website about, and just looking at some of the different monitors that are there already, and it looks like there's one in DC that's spiked up to 150 right now, and it looks like maybe there's an issue. I don't know. It looked like it was a one-time event. Maybe there's an issue with the monitor. I'm not sure, but it made me wonder if a church installs one of these monitors and starts to experience, you know, unusually bad air pollution or air quality. Is there a way that they're notified, or do they have to just kind of be monitoring the website, or how does that, is there like an alert that goes out or something?
Yeah, so the way we set up monitors, most of the alerts go to the university, just through like the registration of everything. But now that you mention it, I think what we could do is set up like an emergency contact with someone at each church, just so if there's any sort of issues, or like if we're seeing hazards and we're like, you know, if you guys on your end are experiencing like more asthma attacks than normal, you can check with us and say like, hey, are you seeing anything on the air quality side? But yeah, I think it would be good to establish like a point person for each church that we can go to if we're seeing anything concerning, right? Whether that's like installation or, you know, health.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Anybody else have anything for the good of the order?
So what's next?
All right. Well, after this week, we have another workshop. I believe our next planned one is a week from today, unless that's changed and I missed them out. So okay, it's next week. So we'll see you here, same time, same place, with a new link. I'll send that one out for you guys. But we'll be covering using data for policy. So we might have jumped the gun a little bit talking about how to lobby the EPA, but we'll be covering that in a little more depth next week, going into the practical use for all the good science we're going to be doing. So stay tuned for that. I'm looking forward to it for one. The nitty gritty of the inside the Beltway stuff, I think, is going to be a lot of fun. So that's planned for next week. Otherwise, in the meantime, we'll work on getting the recording uploaded to YouTube and sent around to everybody, along with a copy of the slide deck in case you want to share that with anybody or use it for reference. But otherwise, I think that might be everything for the evening. So unless anybody has any closing questions, I'll open it up to Robin if she has any announcements she wants to make, or if anybody from the Siege team has anything they want to say. But otherwise, I'll be ready to close this out.
Yes, one quick thing, and this is in reference to a campaign called Maryland Souls to the Polls. So for those of you who are in Maryland, if you have congregations that are interested in doing parties at the poll or early polling sites, or need transportation funding, we in IPL, we have a grant, and we're trying to give away. We're trying to give away money so people can celebrate voting. So please reach out to me And if you reach out to John, you'll send them to me, but it's called Maryland Souls to the Polls. We're trying to give it away. You would think it'd be easy, but we're trying to help people celebrate voting. So.
Well, along that same vein, I believe Reverend Silver might have already started sending some of it around, but we're working on getting a campaign for Get Out the Vote work for the next month, given that the midterms are coming up. So stay tuned for that. We're going to have a couple of recorded pieces from some of our UCC ministers in Maryland and further afield in the broader Central Atlantic Conference, talking about, you know, pressing issues, why it's important to get to the ballot box so that you can push, you know, the people with the authority to do something about it, We'll be sending around a bunch of other handy resources, some media stuff. If you're going to have an event to try to get out the vote and you want the news media to come and cover it, we got a forum for that. Don't sweat it. We have a bunch of important election information that we'll be sending around for each state so that you know when your deadlines are to get registered, to request your absentee ballot, to get your absentee ballot in, all that good stuff. So that might already have started to get trickled out through the pipeline, but if it hasn't, it'll be coming down soon. So stay tuned for that. I would guess probably later this week if you haven't seen any of it already. I'll have to check with Reverend Silver about his distribution of it, but that's on its way. And we look forward to getting you guys looped into doing some of that civic engagement work too, because it's important to talk about, you know, community science and what we can do to move things forward, but it's important to actually get out there and, you know, how do they say it? To afflict the comfortable while we're comforting the afflicted and get some forward motion on some good work for the wider community. So all of that in mind, thanks everybody for coming. It's been a real pleasure, and we'll see you again same time next week.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Have a good night, guys.
Robin and John, can you
Thanks.
stay on for a quick
Yes.
second?
Thanks, everyone.
And
Okay.
Noble,
Thank
just a quick
you.
second.
Yeah.